Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of Old Dude Knows. I didn't even light my cigar before we started. Joel, this could go to heck in a handbasket really quick here. Today, we're going to look back in history. We're going to look back in history at probably the most important person contributing to the Allied victory in World War II. Now, if you're any sort of history buff right now or any sort of historian, you're automatically thinking of names. You might be thinking of, for those of my friends watching this in England, you're probably thinking Churchill or Montgomery. If you're American, you're thinking Patton or Nimitz or Halsey, Spruance. British again might be thinking of Mountbatten. If you're really into history, you might mention Admiral Nikolai Kantizov. I can never say his name. Kuznetsov. He's got a aircraft carrier named after him, Russian aircraft carrier now. Or Australian Admiral John Case. You might want to look him up someday. He did a lot of stuff and doesn't get any recognition like he should. But, in my opinion, all these are not the most important person. All good guesses, though. If that was one of the names you were thinking, pretty good. There's a place, still exists, you could go to it. I think it's about 60 kilometers, so it's at 36 miles, give or take, and I'm going off the top of my head on this, from London, called Bletchley Park. It's a house, manor, think Downton's Abbey. This was Bletchley's Abbey. It's in Milton Keynes in Buckinghamshire. So it's in the Shire for all you people who really like things in the Shire. And it became the principal center of Allied code breaking. Code breaking was something that the British got pretty good at. The first time Germany tried to take over the world. And in the 1930s, we see the little Austrian corporal causing trouble. The British saw what was going to happen. They said, oh, this isn't going to be good. They were really good at codes last time. We better get ready to break the codes again. Luckily, it wasn't that long. There were still a lot of the younger people in the code breaking are now middle-aged or, and some of the middle-aged men and women are getting a little older, but they're still around. So they collected guys, they held it the GC and CS, which is, I don't know what that stands for. But that was what they called it. CS is what ends up becoming MI6 later on. And they had a team of code breakers. Some of the more famous ones, John Tiltman, Dilwyn Knox, or Dilly as they like to call him because they're British. Alan Turing, very famous mathematician. Harry Goldenbach, Gordon Welchman, Hugh Alexander, Donald Michie, Bill Tuttle, and Stuart Milner Barry. Those were the main guys. But Bletchley Park, remember, this is mostly going to happen during World War II. Well, what are most of the British guys doing during World War II? Especially the ones between 18 and 40. They're fighting the Germans. Little bit busy. Well, somebody's got to do all this work. The women. 75% of the people at Bletchley Park were women. They did everything from guard post to running the computers. You'll find out why I did computers like that a little bit later on. Some of them were actually in the code breaking. Some of them they did everything. All the admin work, some of the code breaking, very important. 75%, like I say. The Germans used something, and they had invented it prior to World War II, called the Enigma. Unless this is going to be a 2-hour show, the Enigma very simply had plates that would, every time you pushed a button, all however many plates there were, would shift, giving you, so if you pushed an L, for instance, any other symbol other than L would come up. If you pushed L again, it would be a different letter. So it's not like the ones you got in fifth grade from your math teacher, where once you figured out that L was S, then all the L's were S's. That's not how this worked. It shifted every time. So it'd be very hard to pick up a pattern. They had ones with the simplest ones that they started out with had 3 rotors. Well, 3 rotors gives you 457,000 possibilities for codes. You add that 4th rotor, now you got 11.9 million. You add the 5th rotor for the deluxe Benford 3000 Enigma machine, and now you're at 309 million combinations. Now remember, this is before computers, way before supercomputers. 309, or even the simple one, 457,000 possibilities. It's going to be hard to break. Even if you're really, really good at, let's say you're the best in the world ever, and you can break a 457,000 combination code in, let's say, 18 hours. Well, guess what? They change the code every night at midnight. Yes, it would be good if you broke it, you get some of the old messages, but you just couldn't do it by hand, staring at it. So there's a guy, Sir Hugh Francis Paget Sinclair. He sounds very British, because he was. And he had been in World War I in the GS and GS. I always get this wrong. GC and CS. He had been a code breaker. He made it up to Admiral by 1938. He's in charge of basically MI6 and the code breakers. He sees we're going to have to break their codes. The world's getting more advanced. England is going to get attacked by the Germans. He could see it coming. They got us outmanned. We got to do something. We got to break their codes. So he wanted to set up Bletchley Park. So he looked. He didn't know he wanted to set up Bletchley Park. He knew he wanted to set up something. So he looked around. Oh, my goodness. He looked around and he finds Bletchley Park, which hadn't fallen into disrepair, but none of the family was living in it. So he wanted to buy it. Well, so he goes back to the Admiralty and says, hey, want to buy this? Set it up. Yeah, we need more boats. So he spent some of his own money. I think he spent 6,000 pounds, which I think in today's money, he spent he spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, basically, to buy Bletchley Park with his own money. He then started setting up people. It's a big manor house, but you don't have a lot of room. He started bringing some people in, brought all those guys I named. But then he thought, I need people that think outside, I can't just do this with great mathematicians. I need great mathematicians, but I need people that think abstractly. So he brought in world-class ranked chess players. He brought in great crossword puzzle doers, which apparently back then you could be ranked as a crossword puzzle person, and bridge players. Bridge was very huge, I guess, in Great Britain at the time, and there were rankings. Well, he went after some of the top ranking bridge players. He wanted people that thought abstractly and saw patterns in things. He also brought in some writers. They weren't there all the time, but he would use them or bring them in occasionally, and he wanted fantasy writers, especially fantasy writers that built their own worlds in their book. So J.A.R. Tolkien was part of this. He wasn't a main guy there, but they brought him in from time to time to look at stuff, which is pretty cool. So he gets all these people. It's 1939 now. See, as Americans, we think that World War II started December 7th, 1941. No, it started in 1938, 1937. Um, so, unfortunately, September 1939, Sinclair gets very sick. He hadn't been sick. All of a sudden, he's sick. They take him to the hospital, do an examination, realize he has cancer, did surgery for the cancer, and 2 months later, he died. But, so he never actually got to see him winning World War II come to fruition because he's dead. About this time, if you know your history, Poland is going to get overrun by the Germans. The Polish Secret Service, not Secret Service, the Polish version of the CIA realizes we're done for. They had invented a machine they called a bomba, which could break the three wheeled, I guess, for lack of a better word, Enigma. So, I mean, it's still like today, you don't share stuff even with your allies too much, especially in non-wartime. They saw it was going to happen. A couple of them got one of these bombas, got it out of Poland, got it across the rest of Europe to England, gave it to the GCCS guys. So they've got something to start with. So they got the guys I talked about, Dilly Knox, Josh Cooper, Strachey, all those guys. And they start working on coming up with the machine and the code and breaking the code. And they're doing okay. About that time, Denston, though, who was a mathematician, realized that they're using an electromechanical cipher and they're changing it every day. There's no way we're going to be able to figure this out just by going through and ciphering the code. From Cambridge, Alan Turing, who at the time was probably one of the better mathematicians in the world. Well, he's definitely one of the better ones. He might have been top 3 or 4 mathematicians known in the world. If you saw the movie The Imitation, I think it was called, maybe about 10 years ago, Benedict Cumberbatch played Alan Turing in that movie. Brilliant man. But they figured out they needed something else to do this. Also involved in that was Joan Clark, who was one of the few women who was actually a cryptanalyst. So they decided to invent or build, like these guys I was talking about, invented what they thought the machine should look like on paper. But they're mathematicians and chess champions, not well known for building stuff. So they got a guy who worked for the telephone company. He was a telephone engineer. That's twice I've used air quotes. Engineer, as that's what the name of his job was. He was not a Oxford trained engineer, but he built stuff and did stuff for the phone company. He had invented a automated system for, remember, this is back in the time when you called the operator and the operator, Bertha, do this, and plugged it in to connect you to VR549. Well, he had invented this automatic thing that used valves to do it, and so you would press something and it would make 2 or 3 of the exchanges, which at the time was groundbreaking. So they bring him in, and he builds what they called the Colossus. The Colossus was basically the first programmable computer. So what they would do is once he got it built, they... oh, by the way, for those of you who wonder what part of England and everything, he was from Poplar. So for those of you who watch Call the Midwife, somebody from Leonardus House could have birthed him. We don't know. Not important to this story, but just, a little. So they built this called the Colossus. They ran on tape. And they got pretty good where they could, within a matter of a couple of hours, crack the codes from the Enigma. Um, One story, I don't know how true this is. The Germans obviously knew that we were trying to crack their code because they were trying to crack our code. And so the Germans would send, especially just around midnight or just after midnight, that is yummy. They would send out fake messages. So that if you tried to, just gibberish, so if you would try to spend your time breaking this code, you'd come up with nothing. Well, rumor has it, or the story goes, that in the spring of 1940, what they think happened was this German operator was supposed to, his job was to, or her job was to send a fake code. Well, all this guy did, or girl, is kept punching the letter L. Because remember what I told you, every time you punch a letter, it gives a different letter out. But if you punch L, it never gives an L. Well, this woman who's, I don't know if her name was ever known, or just the woman that happened to be working the desk sorting these, glances them over, and she's supposed to look at it, and she's been doing this for a while, so she can tell kind of by looking at it where she needs to send it. And she looked at this one, and it's just like something's wrong, and she's glancing over it, and she realizes in this whole message there's no letter L, which mathematically is almost impossible with that many characters. It should have come up, there should be an L. So she points this out to Turing, who looks at it, and probably in his brain figured out what the odds were of there being no L's. And knowing that the whole thing was done with L's, way, way smarter than me, they figured out the setup. Once they figured out one setup on the Colossus, then it made it easier to figure it out, and they were figuring it out pretty quick. By 1942, they were really good at it. Well, why is that important? Two reasons. The first reason is England, I don't know if you're aware of this, but it's called the British Isles. Why is it called the British Isles? Because it's an island. Great Britain's an island, Scotland, Ireland, they're islands. Well, you got to get stuff to islands, like supplies. Well, how do you get supplies to an island? In a boat. So the Germans were very good at what was called a wolf pack, a group of submarines that would go out and attack a certain area, and they were just devastating the shipping. Well, now, with the Enigma, they were picking up, and most nights they knew where the wolf pack was going to attack. So, depending on where the British and the American Navy forces were compared to where the attack was, they either sent the ships a different way away from that area, or if we had ships, us in England had ships in the right area, we would attack the wolf pack. So shipping was getting a lot better. We were getting supplies to England a lot more unencumbered than we were. The other thing is D-Day's coming up. Now, everybody, you would think if you looked at the map, if I'm going to attack from England to France, back in those days, I mean, now I would, it's Calais is the place, it's the shortest. That's where you should go. Not Normandy. That's not where you would attack. So we were doing the British and us were doing a misinformation campaign. It's a whole nother podcast of some of the cool stuff that was done. But trying to let the Germans know the obvious, that's where the landing was going to be. And we knew by breaking their codes that what they were sending to the high command back in Berlin and back to France, they believed it. They were getting ready to defend that. They were not getting ready to defend Normandy. You've seen the movies, stuff about the invasion of Normandy and how terrible it was to get on the beach. And that was with a small amount of what Germany could have had at Normandy. They had most of their guys and most of their defenses set up at Calais. So we knew that. So when we attacked Normandy, we had good, good intel that they weren't going to be there with the bulk of their defenses. By the time they got up from where they were, we had a stronghold, and the war was coming. It was inevitable at that point. Once the Allies got Normandy, held Normandy, the war was going to end. The Germans were going to lose. It was just a matter of how long it was going to be. So it was inevitable, but it was going to be a while. Also, other things that it really helped with, North Africa, Rommel was kicking everybody's butt. Started getting his plans a little easier to beat somebody. I mean, ask University of Michigan. If you know what the other team's doing, it's easier to defend it, even in war. So, all these great people, Patton, you think of Patton on the tank, you think of MacArthur, I shall return, Eisenhower in Midway, Churchill, we will fight to them. All those great people, all those great warriors. But for my money, while they were brave, strong, did great, probably a bunch of math, chess, and crossword nerds were the biggest influence on the Allies beating the Germans. This has been like 22 minutes long, and half of it was me trying to light my cigar. Watch that movie. Again, I think it's The Imitation. Look up Benedict Cumberbatch and see what movie. I think he might have won an Academy Award, or he was at least nominated. But do some more research on this if you really like history. It's amazing. And they were so top secret, most people did not know this even exists until like the middle 70s when they finally declassified it. They were that good at keeping secrets. That couldn't happen anymore. So, if you're going to win a war, you need mighty warriors, you need brave, strong people, you need great planners, but you also need math nerds and chess nerds. This old dude knows, now you know. See you next time.